The previous Trudeau government was a fake feminist government that paid lip service to the equality rights of women. That government, of which you were a key part, was infamous for its multitude of broken promises. Is your so-called new government just carrying on this fine Liberal tradition?
Minister, you must admit that your approach over the last decade is just not working.
In so many areas, the Carney government is even less transparent than the Trudeau government was. Are you keeping your GBA Plus analysis secret because it has nothing favorable to say about your government's legislation?
Monsieur le Ministre.
No.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. We're going to jump into some Senate action. We've got three of our favorite senators here, Senator Martin, Senator Housakos, and Denise Batters. These guys are sharp. Sean Fraser, our Justice Minister, Attorney General, is in the hot seat. Let's take a peek. Let's take a look and a listen. This is how it goes in the Canadian Senate.
Senator Housakos.
Minister, welcome to the Senate. Earlier this week, Canadians were stunned by reports out of the Greater Toronto Area describing a police operation to disrupt a dual responsibility for robbing graves and mausoleums. Police have counted more than 300 thefts so far, including jewelry, pieces containing human remains. Minister, it's unimaginable that after a decade of Liberal governance, Canada has reached a point where not even the dead are safe from criminal activity. Families already grieving their losses must now fear that their loved ones' resting places will be desecrated. It's really heart-wrenching. Minister, let's call this what it is. It's a complete failure of our public safety and criminal justice system. Why can't the government take the safety of Canadians seriously and finally step up to address the crime crisis unfolding in communities from coast to coast to coast?
Question.
Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you sincerely, Senator, for the question, and thank you all for the kind invitation to have an important conversation with you today. Obviously, public safety is a pressing priority for the Government of Canada. It's a pressing priority, frankly, for Canadians in every part of the country. The circumstances that you described are clearly heinous examples of criminal misbehavior that need to be addressed with serious penalties, but ideally with prevention that actually stops crime from happening before it takes place. The strategy that we're moving forward with has several pillars. The first is to have stronger laws to ensure that people who commit serious crimes face serious penalties. The second is to ensure, Senator, that we properly resource the front line. For our part, 1,000 new RCMP officers, 1,000 new border officers will help make a meaningful difference. But finally, we have to engage in the upstream investments, whether it's mental health and addiction support, affordable housing, supportive housing, or importantly programs that target at-risk youth to prevent people from engaging criminal lifestyles to begin with. These are not easy solutions, but I have all the faith in the world that if we give law enforcement the tools to do their job, work across levels of government and across political party affiliations, we can advance meaningful reforms that will not only punish wrongdoers for these kinds of heinous acts, but will prevent crime from taking place in the first place.
Senator Housakos.
Minister, when criminals feel emboldened enough to desecrate graves hundreds of times without fear of consequences, that tells us everything that we need to know about the state of law and order under our government. This is what a decade of weakened sentencing, lax enforcement, and catch-and-release justice has produced. Minister, you must admit that your approach over the last decade is just not working. We need to commit to restoring real consequences for crimes and criminals before Canadians lose all confidence in our judicial system.
Senator, you may be surprised in our points of agreement that we believe that when serious crimes take place, the perpetrators should face serious penalties. These are not just words on my part, but backed by actions, including the introduction of Bill C-14, which adopts stronger bail measures, particularly targeting violent repeat offenders, stronger sentences, again, for those who would commit serious crimes, aggravating factors for people who would target certain harms that actually would reverberate through the entirety of the community. I completely agree that serious penalties can act as a deterrent to help stop crime from taking place in the future, but that is only part of the equation. We need as well to ensure that the front line is properly supported and that we make those upstream investments if we want to affect not just change over the next year or two, though we are seeing crime rates come down in the past year, but we actually solve these kinds of challenges over the course of a generation.
Oh, yeah.
Senator Martin.
Yes, but Minister, Canadians watched a homeowner do everything to protect himself in the face of an armed intruder, yet he ended up the one facing charges. So that sends a chilling message to every law-abiding citizen across this country. So, Minister, will you commit to reviewing the criminal code provisions on self-defense to ensure that Canadians defending their families are not treated like criminals while real criminals walk free?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Look, without offering commentary on the specifics of the case, I think it's important that we trust the police to exercise their discretion in circumstances where it's appropriate, while we still recognize that the law includes today the exact features that you're calling for. The use of reasonable force is permitted. In addition to confirming that that law exists and we do not intend to erode it one iota, we have to advance additional provisions that protect people against home invasions. Specifically in Bill C-14, both on the sentencing side and on bail reform, we are going to have tougher penalties and harder bail conditions when it comes to people who are facing charges for violent home invasion, and of course harsher sentences for those who commit violent home invasions. It's a complex area, but to be clear, the law provides the exact remedy that you've asked for in your question, the use of reasonable force to protect yourself in your home.
Senator Batters.
Minister Fraser, your Liberal government promised during the April election that, quote, every measure in your platform would be implemented with a, quote, full GBA plus analysis. Before Mark Carney became the Prime Minister, there were more than 100 mentions of gender-based analysis and, plus in mandate letters to cabinet ministers. And now it has been completely erased from Prime Minister Carney's universal mandate letter to ministers. A GBA plus analysis used to be available online when a government bill was introduced in Parliament. Now they are nowhere to be seen, including with your Bill C-9. The previous Trudeau government was a fake feminist government that paid lip service to the equality rights of women. That government, of which you were a key part, was infamous for its multitude of broken promises. Is your so-called new government just carrying on this fine Liberal tradition?
Monsieur le Ministre.
It will not come as a surprise. I have a different characterization of the role of gender-based analysis and the high regard with which we hold the need to consider the feminist perspective when adopting different policies. We do still conduct gender-based analyses to understand the unique impact of decisions that we take as governments on women and women from different backgrounds to ensure that we're looking at those intersecting grounds of discrimination. We also have made the decision to reinstitute funding for women and gender equality to continue to not only consider the impacts as we're developing laws, but to support the organizations who are on the front line helping advance the rights of women and communities. We may disagree on the success or failure of those policies, but rest assured it's an ever-present feature of the political conversations we have when we make decisions about which laws to adopt in Canada.
Senator Batters.
Well, so the gender-based analysis now is secret. Minister, for the last 10 years, your government claimed that GBA Plus is a key lens for evaluating legislation, and you promised to conduct this analysis, but there's now nothing public for parliamentarians and Canadians to review. In so many areas, the Carney government is even less transparent than the Trudeau government was. Are you keeping your GBA Plus analysis secret because it has nothing favourable to say about your government's legislation?
Monsieur le Ministre.
No. Look, I don't think that we have to turn gender-based violence or gender considerations into a partisan exercise. If you wish to, I can point out that the Conservative Party of Canada voted against the National Action Plan to end gender-based violence. I would rather have a conversation about what decisions we're actually going to make to advance the rights of women, advance the well-being of Canadians. We want to continue to understand the impacts that our laws are going to have on people from different walks of life, from different life experiences, and for that reason, I think the gender-based analyses is still an important tool that is used to strengthen the impact that our laws are going to have.
Senator Housakos.
Minister, earlier this fall I introduced Bill S-236, a bill to amend the Canadian Victims' Bill of Rights and establish an enforceable framework for the implementation of victims' rights in Canada. This is work that many victims advocates and, frankly, many parliamentarians expected the federal government to complete since the Canadian Victims' Bill of Rights was adopted in 2015. Yet it's been over a decade. No concrete legislative mechanism has been put into place to make these rights meaningful and enforceable. Why has your government not acted in almost 10 years to meaningfully strengthen victims' rights? And why has it fallen to individual parliamentarians and not your department, the Department of Justice, to move this forward for victims who desperately need some support?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you sincerely for the question, and more importantly for your concern for the victims of crime in this country. There's a bill I've now, at risk of being a broken record, cited a few times that we will be tabling over the next number of weeks. There's a number of different issues, may include in that bill or subsequent legislation that we wish to target. I've mentioned intimate partner violence, protecting kids online. We will also be seeking to address delays in the justice system, but importantly, an additional component that we're seeking to address through legislation are reforms to the Victims' Bill of Rights. People ought to know to what information they are entitled. People ought to have access to certain testimonial aids to take part in the process. People should be understanding what remedies they have, not just in a criminal context, but in a civil context when they are victimized by crime. This is an issue that is extremely important. It has the attention not only of individual parliamentarians, but the Government of Canada, and the Department of Justice is fully seized with the issue and putting together potential reforms as we speak.
Senator Housakos.
Minister, we've been also sounding like a broken record here for a decade when it comes to victims' rights. And if your government is truly committed to improving victims' rights, how do you explain that in your own department's report on the Status Repeal Act, one of the provisions scheduled for repeal is a section explicitly designed to make access to information easier for victims, including information about release conditions, temporary absences, and potential proximity to the offenders? How can the government claim to support victims when at the same time it's choosing to repeal a provision specifically designed to protect them, a provision that was never even brought into force in the first place?
Monsieur le Ministre.
The piece of legislation that you're referring to is happens annually. It's a mechanism of good governance to clean up laws that were never brought into force. Some of these laws are not brought into force for good reasons. Others sit on the books and are not actually doing any good to help people. I wouldn't read too much into what is a formulaic repeal of legislation that's never been brought into force, when we can actually point simultaneously to the initiatives that I've mentioned that will be introduced through legislation to amend the Victims' Bill of Rights. To the extent that you have follow-up questions on the statutes that were not brought into force but have been repealed, I'd be happy to follow up and answer whatever questions your office may have offline.
Oh, yeah.
Senator Housakos.
Minister Fraser, Canada's spy chief delivered an alarming warning last week. Nearly 1 in 10 terrorism investigations now involve at least one minor who is radicalized online. He reported that violent extremist content, including anti-Semitism, is spreading faster than ever and is increasingly targeting young people. Even more disturbing, he confirmed that several disrupted plots involved attacks planned specifically against Jewish communities, including 2 Ottawa minors arrested last year for allegedly plotting a mass casualty attack. Ministers, this is what happens when your government allows the open, willful promotion of extremist propaganda on our streets, including pro-Palestinian protests calling for Antifada and the elimination of the State of Israel and its people. When will the government finally take anti-Semitism seriously and bring forward real, concrete legal measures to protect Jewish Canadians from the growing threats they face in communities across the country? And I know we have a bill that's coming here soon, but why did it take so long, and why did we have to get to the point we are now?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Senator Housakos, you raised a number of different issues in your question. The first is on the recruitment of minors for very serious criminal offenses. This is a pressing and substantial concern that demands action. We are looking at different options, likely of a legislative nature, that are going to address the recruitment of young people into criminal activity, into criminal organizations, and potentially into terrorist activity as well. We need to send a very clear signal that if you recruit children to carry out criminal behavior, you will face very serious consequences. There is a perception that because young people may face different criminal consequences, that they are better recruits for certain kinds of criminal behavior. And we need to go upstream a level to ensure that those who would do something so egregious as recruit a child to commit crimes is treated with serious consequences. The second item that you mentioned about protecting Jewish Canadians, I do take issue with one characterization. I would differentiate between a peaceful protest in support of Palestine from hatred directed towards Jewish Canadians. We do intend, as we've discussed at length during this appearance, legislative measures that are designed to attach protection to religious institutions, including synagogues, to buildings, including Jewish community centers, and to hate crimes more broadly, regardless of where they take place in our communities. I'm out of time, but this is an important conversation. I thank you for the question.
Senator Housakos.
Minister, I think that our government has been late, and I think there's been a lack of political will in really tackling anti-Semitism in a serious way. When we have radical Hamas protesters in Toronto, and they're supported by police forces that are shutting down recordings of the Canadian national anthem, where earlier on today at McGill University, I have a Jewish student sending me a video of protesters, so to speak, but more than that, masked individuals going into a classroom at McGill University under the supervision of McGill security. It highlights the degree of how this has gotten out of hand. And it has gotten out of hand because we're not applying the criminal code and the hate elements of the criminal code that are there because of lack of political will. So when will the highest authority, our Justice Minister, start sending a signal along with the Prime Minister that none of this behavior will be tolerated any longer?
Monsieur le Ministre.
You've asked when we will start sending a signal. I would take it that tabling legislation to address this precise issue on the floor of the House of Commons counts as sending a signal. With enormous respect, there are stakeholders representing the interests of Jewish Canadians who are endorsing the bill that we've now moved forward with, while some of our parliamentary colleagues from other parties are decrying it as a censorship bill, who won't commit to actually supporting the measures that are designed and developed in some ways through the feedback that we've received directly from the Jewish community. We've iterated significantly the initial vision of this bill, which was designed in its infancy to protect people seeking to participate in religious buildings and institutions, to ensure that it captures hate not just against Jewish Canadians, but hate more broadly, no matter where it takes in our communities. So the signal has been sent. The difference is being made. All that's left to do is to attract the support of enough members of Parliament from different parties.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Oh, yeah. We'll wrap it up right there, gang. Aaron, Canadian Looney, smash the like, hit subscribe, check out one of the other videos floating around here. Get your Canadian federal politics right here. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Thanks for watching the video. We'll catch you in one of the next ones. Ciao for now.